process of purification begins with bhakti yoga and karma yoga, where you can purify the mind sufficiently so you're ready to look inside. And looking inside is the royal path. That's why it's called Raja Yoga, the royal path, which is not an external path. This path is now an internal path. So when you study the 8 limb path of yoga, there's a Bahar sadhana, which means an outer practice, and there's Antar sadhana, which is the inside practice. So the inside practice begins with concentration, meditation, samadhi. These are 3 higher practices. But the first 5 rungs of the ladder have to be systematically climbed for purification to take place. So the inside practice is concentration, meditation, and samadhi. So the introspection that we're learning, the royal path that we're learning, is quietening the mind sufficiently. The mind has to be sufficiently quiet so you can go deeper inside of yourself. So this is an internal path. The Raja Yoga path is an internal path. So earlier we talked about the ego. The mind is trapped because the ego needs gratification. So if somebody comes, say if you're a yoga teacher and somebody comes and tells you after your class, you taught a really nice yoga class, and you get very happy. And some other student comes and tells you, I just didn't like your yoga class today. And then you feel depressed. So the ego needs to be constantly gratified. And so we're always looking for this gratification. We're always looking for appreciation. And the mind is trapped because the ego is constantly looking for approval. The ego wants to be approved constantly. That's just the job of the ego. So we have to really understand that we should not be trapped by our ego. If somebody tells you you're a great person, say thank you. If somebody says you're a lousy person, say thank you. Thank you for reminding me of my faults. Which is not easy to do. The ego plays these games with our mind, and our mind gets trapped by the ego. So what we're learning again through the path of introspection is we don't really need the ego for our introspection. We need, in fact, to release the ego for our introspection. And how are we releasing the ego? We're releasing the ego through karma yoga. We're releasing the ego through bhakti yoga. When we have learned through the practices of selfless service, we're just constantly serving other people without worrying about what the universe is going to give us or not. And the universe will always give you, because you're a representative of the universe. You're working just as the universe works. The universe is constantly giving. The sun is shining, the water is flowing. The universe is not asking us to give anything back, never. So when you're always giving and you're always in a place of service, the ego will be removed. And you will not be trapped by the needs of the ego. You will not be trapped by the needs of the mind. You're ready to go deeper into those states of consciousness which are accessing the soul. The soul is beyond the ego and the mind. And when we can release the ego and the mind, then you can access the levels of the soul which we in yoga terms call higher consciousness. Your consciousness is now shifting to a place that you realize that my ego is a grain of sand in the grand spectrum of the universe. And when you can see that equation, then you're not trapped in the trammels of the ego anymore. And so you feel the bliss of the soul. You feel your spirit of service is touching your community, is touching the lives of other people who need your experience as a yoga teacher. And if you can be in that spirit of helping people understand their bodies and their minds and release the emotions that they've blocked inside of their chakras, then you're in a place of service. You're helping them heal themselves from their very core. Because the healing has to take place first. And the healing happens through karma yoga. The healing happens through bhakti yoga. And the introspection will happen naturally as a consequence to the karma yoga and the bhakti yoga practices.